This is day 5 of the December 89 7-day retreat at Springwater. I wonder whether for the time of this talk, we can sit here together and listen together, listen and look together in a fresh way. In which there is not just the spoken word, and the meaning that the brain supplies for the word from its past experience, from its knowledge and memory. We have to understand each other's words. That's clear. And if we assign different meanings to different words, we will misunderstand each other. So if meanings of words aren't clear, we can clear that up in meetings. I'm not familiar with every single person's meaning for words. But words are not the only thing that is communicated here. So can we, on this marvelously beautiful morning, a little while ago, looking out of the window, there were these thick flakes dancing, swirling and glistening in the wintry sun. Can we communicate with each other in a spirit of friendship? Not division or resistance or opposition. Even though what may be said causes a disturbance within, can one sit with that disturbance and not let it come between you and me? Allow it to have arisen and be there as one more thing sitting here. Sitting here together, not pitted against each other with opinions or ideas. Someone asked, do you have insight? You use so many words, it's just words upon words. So maybe it would be just as eloquent as someone else said, just to sit quietly together. But we do that all day long. Is it the question of whether I have insight or whether we can look and listen together with insight? Not just stuck with the words, but looking and listening deeply to what is going on within without allowing that to become a barrier between us. Is that possible? Is that asking too much? We can try, we can see. looking and listening together at the same time, at the same thing, with interest. Without comparing my interest to your interest, my energy to your energy, then we're off and divided, stuck in comparison and the isolation that comparison brings. One of the questions is, what really is awareness? Or perception? Sometimes we use one word, sometimes the other. Right now, to me, the word awareness or the fullness or the wholeness of perception are interchangeable, two interchangeable words. Perception implies more the senses operating openly. But so it is in awareness. We're not differentiating by those two terms. But what does it refer to, this word, or is it just a word, a concept? We just a moment ago were talking about the thick snowflakes in the sunshine, twirling around, sometimes up, sometimes down, glistening with light, the whiteness of them against the brown background of the house. All of these words that are being used are not the actuality of what is going on or what's going on there. Can one see the difference between the word, the description, the name, the label, and what it refers to? I'm using word, description, name, label interchangeably. The difference between that and this here, right now here. Hands clapping the thighs, or the sound of it. The words hand clapping on the thighs is not this, and the word sound of hands clapping thighs is not this. This is this. And no words can capture it. No knowledge can explain it or capture it. This is this. Words may come up, explanations, descriptions, poetry, but all of that is not this. This, as it happens, is unknowable. The words are graspable, and we cling to the words and stick with the words and lose the touch with this, with the directness of this. Looking down here, there's what we call pans. Color, lavender, dark where there's some shadows from wrinkles, darker, lighter where there are no wrinkles. It's all words, but the direct perception of it is not a word. As each one looks down on the floor or on the mat, the word mat, the word floor, is not what's there. So our first question is, can there be the immediacy of perception regardless of the words that come up to see a word as a word arising from memory in the brain. There it is, the word is there, one can hear it. That is so, just like this floor is so, these pants, the color is just so. But the word is not this. It's not a word. Do you see that? Can we see that? Can that be clear? The question may come up, well, what's wrong with the word? We're not talking about right or wrong. We're looking at what's happening. And usually with the word, with this initial process of labeling something, goes an immediate reaction. I like these pants, or I don't like these pants. I wish I had a pair like them, or I wish I had a different pair. I like this sound, or I don't like this sound. It bothers me. Or it's refreshing to hear the sound. So it doesn't remain just with putting words on occurrences, but there's a reaction. I like it or I don't like it. It's good or it's bad. It reminds me of this or that. And usually in this reaction, there is a bringing oneself in relationship to what is perceived through this judgment. And not only judging something as right or wrong, good or bad, beautiful or ugly, but at the same time establishing with such words, with such inward talk, one may not say it out loud, it can happen inaudibly within, as it does most of the time, in sitting. With such words and comments is established the entity that sees something, the me, as separate from what is seen, separated by the labeling, the naming, the reacting, the judgment. Can that be seen? Knock, knock. It can be immediately a mental image of a fat fly. Maybe it isn't fat, but that's the image. Bouncing around the windows, knocking at the glass, up and down, around. And the mental image and the words that are spoken right now are not this happening there. And the reaction, I don't like flies, or last summer they were much worse than they are now. These are memories. I remember how many flies we had one morning when two people almost left the talk. You know, one can go on and on. That's how we often relate with each other. We tell each other of past experiences, of what this reminds us of, and can hardly wait. If we're so inclined, we may be shy, but most of the time we want to get our story in. What I remember about flies and fly paper. How we had a tremendous argument whether to swat them or put thicker fly paper on. And Meanwhile, this bzzz is lost to the perception. The mind is now in a video with remembered reactions and maybe establishing oneself because one is telling one's story. Others laugh. This can give a boost to the self-image. And here is this separate entity, recreated from memory, judgment, thinking, labeling, knowing, the reactions from others. I like her, I don't like her. And what these reactions may do to the body. It's an upper or a downer. Sometimes people say to me, I got to tell you what happened. I can't quite explain it. Don't know if I can describe it even, but suddenly while sitting or lying in bed or on the balcony, something changed radically. Everything looked different, although it was the same. Same place. Same ceiling, same blanket, same window, same dish or same creak, but it was different and vivid and an energy. Arising with it. An energy and often a deep joy. It is not produced by any idea. One doesn't know where it comes from. At that moment, there is no feeling of separate me. There is no naming, no reacting, no judging. No remembering of what this reminds me. This whole complex, nervous, organismic structure which supports the sense of me, the remembrances, the ideas, the inner chatter, the reactions, judgments, past experiences, all the knowledge, and all the images connected with me in connection with that is bypassed. This whole structure is not, the energy doesn't travel into that network. It's just there in this present state of, call it what you will, awareness, perception. Nothingness, where everything is just what it is, and not perceived through the veil of our prejudices and opinions and fears and desires, which is that network of memory, experience, the reaction, naming, me, my picture, my image, my past hurts, my desires, fears. And since the energy isn't traveling in that and convoluting in it, swirling or circling around in it, it's just there, available. And that's why one feels so energetic. Suddenly, one knows not why or where from. And then, what happens the next moment? One has to look. What usually happens is a thought coming up. Oh my, what is happening to me? Am I having a mystical experience, or am I getting enlightened? And here the energy travels into this network of what I am, according to my past readings and listenings to stories about enlightenment or whatever. What I have maybe wanted to be or become for a long time, and now maybe I am that. And as one pays a moment of attention, it's gone. Because it's now all thought and desire again to fixate it, to keep it. Maybe thinking, how did this happen? How did I bring this about? So I can repeat it. Go that path again. Because I want that again. That alone is worth living. And thinking, or else, one person put it, an immense inflation taking place about me, walking in this inflation for 2 days. Until finally coming to and realizing what is going on. And this crucial moment of coming to, waking up and seeing this inflation, the thoughts that are still reverberate in the memory about me, the pride, we all know it. At this crucial moment of waking up, then what happens? It is so crucial. Crucial means a crossing of roads. Either one goes on in the same vein, saying, I shouldn't be proud. I should be modest. This is disgusting. Wasting my time 2 days. What all I else could have experienced if I hadn't wasted it. We often likened it to a train station. You don't have them so much here, or at least I don't use trains in this country, but in Switzerland, where everywhere there goes a train, little trains. You go out of one train, go across, either underneath the piers, how do you say, perron?
Trestle.
Huh?
Trestle.
No, underneath where you get into a train, that little cement strip. Either you walk right across into the next train, you don't waste any time, or you go underneath for a moment and you get another train, and off you are. This is how it is. We wake up for a moment, out of one train into the next. One dream into another fantasy of what I should have been or should be like, or could have done, had I been, and so forth, so forth, so forth. All of that happens in that structure. Or we've been recently calling it the capsule of me, which feels like me. There's not really any me there, but don't take my word for it. Find out for yourself whether there is a self. There's only these structures and the tremendous feelings they arouse in the body. And these feelings, particularly if it's a gut feeling, validates that there is me. Because I have a gut feeling about something. But if one begins to observe directly how a thought about how good I am or how bad I am gets this gut going, then one doesn't trust all of these feelings as validating that there is me. One just sees the connections. Powerful connections which trigger new connections, lay down new connections in this network. My latest experience. All added, we either call it this network, if we refer to it organismically, but one also can talk about the story of my life and adding to it chapters illustrations, pictures, maps, appendixes ad infinitum. And this doesn't just happen without reaction to it. We love it. We are attached to it. We like to read the story of our life over and over, whether it's a story of joy or misery. We like it all. We say we don't, but we're attached to it. We have to keep reading it, keep talking about it, keep remembering it, keep reminiscing or commiserating with others in it. And every time we do, and there's a reaction within and from others, there is some more solidity given to this story of me. Which can arouse tremendous energies in this body. Thinking of one's success, past successes or future successes. Or thinking of one's past failures or future failures. Calling oneself a failure. It immediately impacts this body. Then one says, I am depressed, I have a depression. As though there was an I that had that. But observation reveals that there are thoughts which cause certain feelings that are labeled from past remembrances, depression or elation. We started out by asking, what is awareness? Keeping in mind that this is a word, as it is enunciated and heard by the ear, and known or interpreted by the brain. But we're not just asking for words and concepts, we're asking, what does it actually refer to? Is there such a thing other than the word and the concept? Such a process or whatever of awareness, which is not labeling, reacting, remembering, and a separate me that is doing that. Or the feeling that as though there were. Because all of that is not awareness. That's thinking about what is out there. What is briefly heard but immediately interpreted. Although there is a gap, that's the wondrous thing. The marvelous thing that there is a gap between the first moment of perception and the interpretation, which leads to reaction and remembrance and meanness. There's a gap. If there was no gap, then this process would just continue, and there would be never any direct relationship. Relationship still implies me with that, and it isn't like that. Never any direct perception which is non-separate from what is perceived. The perception and what is perceived and the process of it all being one. No, undivided. No sense of isolation or separation. And therefore a vividness, aliveness, and energy. Next moment there may be, I have that. Can I keep that? And to see That's thought. To see it. It's possible to do that. It's possible when the mind is open to inquire, is interested to find out, and realizes from past observations and thinkings and worryings, pleasures and pains, the utter burden of separateness. Me versus you, your fault, things being your fault, that I suffer. We do that, but there comes a moment when we realize we don't have to do that. It's an endless burden. Whereas to look within, to find out what is going on, is discovery, is freshness and newness. So we were talking about the gap, that there is a gap between the instant of perception and the brain springing into action, saying this is this or this is that. And in that gap, energy can gather in simple awareness. And that simple awareness may bypass all the other. Or if the other happens, if something is energized, as a word, a reaction, it can be seen as such and not get in the way. Not go into this tremendous whirling of responses, which is all of our whole past. I read recently, I stand to be corrected, that on a lie detector test, there is a measurable interval between the input and the reaction of the body. The question that the person is asked, and maybe the sweat in the palm. It takes time for the impulse to travel to the organism. Just wondering whether a person being hooked to one of those devices, if there was simple awareness, a speculation, but I'm wondering whether there would be any response on the needle. I'll move on to something else that was mentioned to me, and it may be related to this. Everything is related, isn't it? Everything is related. This person said, in doing this work here, and seeing quite clearly what it is about, an anxiety arises that I will have to give up everything I'm attached to. My friends, my groups, the favorite things I do. That I'll have to give all of that up and and live without it. Are we together in looking at this? Someone saying, I have a feeling that in doing this work of looking into the way the mind works, attachments, self, I get the anxious feeling that I have to give up my friends, what I love to do most, maybe creative work, artist's work, the groups I cherish, I like to be with, and admittedly feel identified with, at least somewhat identified with. Well, I have to give all of that up, and I don't know whether I want to do that. There's anxiety about that. These thoughts come up, don't they? They're thoughts, aren't they? At the moment, a thought like this comes up, and the anxiety it triggers is one all captured by that, wrapped up in it, involved in it. And then it all seems so real. Yes, that's what I have to do. Yes, this is what's going to happen. Thoughts can have an amazing power of reality. We all know it from dreams. Even stubbing one's toe in a dream, or twisting one's ankle while one is dreaming that one is stepping off a curb. And waking up into one's amazement, this was not real at all. So what about this question of, do I have to give up my attachments, or sometimes, do I have to give up the self, which I feel so attached to, so, I think it's the wrong question. I don't know whether I talk about giving things up. I don't think I do. It's not the point. It's not, because who is the giver-upper? Is this the idea of me? To become a purer me, I have to give up what is impure about me. I'm putting it this way. That may not quite hit the mark how you may put it to yourself, but that's in there, isn't it? There's the me worrying about what will happen to me if I give me up. Can one track that down with a patient attention? What we're talking about here is to see what this me is, to find out about it. To begin to understand the thoughts and the reactions which confirm it. The objects that one grasps which confirm the me. One person said that this morning. I'm beginning to realize I've not only been perceiving objects, but I'm grasping them. I want to perceive them, and that confirms the me. That there is a grasper, an understander, a perceiver. All we're asking is what is happening in this mind and body, and in our relationship with each other and in the world, where there is almost constant conflict, collision. My way versus your way, or our way versus theirs. And ours being the better, theirs the worse. Or theirs out, not just the worst, but evil. We're wondering whether there can be insight into that in one human being sitting on the mat or walking or sitting in an easy chair. Becoming aware of what constitutes this feeling of me. what constitutes the attachment. Attachment happening when every time I bring up the thought of me, something happens to me that feels good. The moment I remember how well I did this, I feel good. And the attachment, like an addiction to the chemical reaction in the body. We're so concerned about addictive substances, but we're not concerned about thoughts, which cause tremendous addiction in the body to think that again. Because a habituation to the feelings that it arouses, the pleasurable feelings, and amazingly enough, an addiction also to the miserable feeling. Because when we look, or people talk to me about really delving into their pains or sicknesses, often what reveals itself to one's great surprise that there's attachment to that too. Attachment to victimization. We're attached to all the images we have of ourselves because we're attached to the idea that we exist as somebody separate from everybody else. And any image which will confirm this is there's an attachment to that. For fear of what? What are we afraid of? Why are we holding on to these ideas about ourselves? Which obviously keep us divided within and in collision with each other. And in collision as groups with which we identify. National, ideological, religious groups in constant collision or alliance against others, other alliances. Why this tremendous attachment to that? What are we afraid of? Are these just words, or is one really asking this? What are we afraid of? What are we trying to protect? What are we clinging to? Why this fear? Fear of not being? Fear of dissolving, of disappearing? Which, as we look at it this instant, as the words are spoken, these are conceptualizations, aren't they? These are words. These are ideas. Thought cannot possibly know the absence of itself. Thought can only think more thoughts. And one of those thoughts is how horrible if I wasn't there. That's still thought. For there to be no thought, there has to be no thought. And is that the fear? Of, as one person put it this morning, as the greatest fear in my life is of dying. And in asking, is it the way one may die, physical pain or so? I said, no, not that. Just fear of ending. The story of me ending. Can one face this fear? Spell it out. That's how we start. Verbalize it. And realize the limitations of the words, the thought about death or not being there can never capture a state in which there is no sense of me, no chatter about me or imagery about me. And yet that state dawns on human beings suddenly, to one's great surprise, feeling alive and vivid. Is it possible to realize that what one is holding on to is ideas, images? And the feelings connected with it? This whole world we've built up in and around ourselves of ideas and images. The attachment to it and the suffering from it, the imprisonment in it, the burden and bondage of it. And then the frightening thought, I'll have to let go of all of that. It's all thought. Do you see that? We could ask the question differently, maybe. For whatever it's worth, is it possible to have friends, have close friends, to listen to music or write a story, walk in the woods alone or with someone else, without the constant sense of me, the constant attachment to that, the constant chatter of it, but with insight in that process, insight into the process of attachment, and maybe walk with each other without attachment. And yet with a deep sense of affection, not just for the person one may be walking with, but for everything around one and underfoot, in front of the eyes. But not attached to it because awareness detects the thoughts and the processes and doesn't go for them. Because in awareness, which is not me-centered, there is an intelligence operating, which needs not the willpower of the me. It functions in unfathomable ways, seeing a dead-endedness or a dangerous thing and not going for it, because it's finished, it's seen for what it is. One has been through it so many times, one has experienced it, lived through it, looked at it, and one doesn't have to go with it. With a painful or separating habit, or attaching habit, addictive habit. Now I hear someone say, you are painting ideal pictures again. You're not speaking to my problem, my pain, my confusion, my misery, or whatever. But I am. Find out what that is. Find out what the attachment to it is. And in listening and looking, also hear the fly bumping into the wall. Feeling the breath and sensing the sunshine. We are free to look and listen. And the first thing we may look and listen to is all the barriers, the blockages. But we're free to listen to it. The disturbance. We're free to feel it. No one prevents us. Except thought, you mustn't, or you shouldn't, or do this instead. And that too, we are free to see and hear the internal chatter. It happens. We will end here for today.